At the beginning of the movie, we will be taken to a brutal prison where corrupt guards are. It can be seen that the prisoners were being fought free. Inside the prison, they were told that this fight was an illegal fight managed directly by the chief warden to be shown to the rich online. The prisoners who fight must not stop until one of them dies. The scene switched to a man named Wyatt, who has just picked up his son home from school. When he got home, Wyatt's wife Mary was shocked when she saw bruises on her son's face. Mary asked Wyatt what had happened to their son. Wyatt replied that his son had just fought at school. However, Wyatt did not respond much to the problem, because he thought it was a natural thing for a boy. But Mary seemed upset with Wyatt, because Wyatt shouldn't allow this. After that, Wyatt went to his friend named Steve. It is known that Steve is the head of the FBI, who used to often cooperate with Wyatt in combating crime. It turns out that Wyatt was also a former Special Forces officer who has been fired for 2 years, because he often acted brutally and arbitrarily to the criminals he caught. Then Steve tried to offer Wyatt a job to investigate a brutal prison. Steve explained that in prison there must be a lot of crime scandals. Moreover, many prisoners have died without any cause. Even in this period of 1 month alone, there have been 12 prisoners who were reported dead. The FBI has confirmed this case to the guards there, but unfortunately, they seem to cover up the matter. The FBI suspected that the warden of the prison was the mastermind of all the deaths of inmates there. Steve asked Wyatt to disguise as a prisoner to find out what really happened. If Wyatt succeeded in carrying out the mission, then Steve would make Wyatt as the FBI agent as well as a huge bonus. Not only that, his child will also be given a scholarship until college. Then Steve asked Wyatt to give an answer as soon as possible, whether Wyatt would accept or reject the mission. The next day after Wyatt thought of Steve's offer, he finally contacted Steve to accept the mission, considering that Wyatt had also been unemployed for 2 years. Before going on a mission, Wyatt said goodbye to his family by telling him that he would be away from work for the next few weeks. After that, Wyatt met Steve, who was near the police station. Here Steve asked Wyatt to make trouble so that Wyatt could go to prison. Steve also explained what Wyatt should do when he was already there. Without waiting too long, Wyatt got out of the car and hijacked one of the police cars around there. Wyatt did this so that he could immediately enter the prison to carry out a mission. It can be seen that Wyatt continued to be chased by other policemen until finally Wyatt was caught. Long story short, Wyatt then found guilty of beheading a police car and molesting a policeman. After that, he was taken and would go to prison. Once there, Wyatt and all the other new prisoners were lined up to get a lecture from Warden. Before they were put in their respective cells, soon came Warden. Warden said that this prison was his home. Therefore all prisoners must submit and respect Warden, and if anyone dared to resist, then Warden would not hesitate to give punishment. After that, Wyatt and all the other new prisoners were brought into their respective cells. At night, Warden was seen fighting the inmates again until one of them died. Before long, Warden was approached by his deputy, who told him that the new prisoner named Wyatt was a former Special Forces officer who was quite brutal. Hearing this, Warden seemed happy because at the moment he would have a new fighter. Warden immediately ordered the deputy to immediately test Wyatt's abilities the next day. Back to the fight that was happening after the two fighters exchanged fistfights. In the end, someone named Orly managed to win it. In the morning, Wyatt and all the inmates were taken to the field to exercise. Here Wyatt got a new friend who was his cell neighbor named Orly, and we know Orly was the one who won the fight last night. Wyatt also met an inmate named Tommy. Then Wyatt saw that one of the inmates named Ari was being bullied by 2 other inmates. Not liking to see that, Wyatt immediately helped Ari by expelling the 2 prisoners. In the afternoon, when all the prisoners were about to be put back in the cell, he was suddenly detained by the deputy warden, and then he was visited by the two inmates who had bullied Ari. It turned out that these two prisoners were ordered by the deputy warden to test Wyatt's abilities. It can be seen that Wyatt can easily beat up the two prisoners. After that, he was taken to Warden's room, where Warden said that he would make Wyatt his fighter and would fight the day after tomorrow. Warden insisted that all prisoners here must not refuse orders from Warden. If anyone dared to refuse it, then Warden will not hesitate to torture him to death.
You've got guts. I like that. Any chance for an appeal? Oh yes, I pounded the leather in my day.
The next day, Wyatt was visited by Mary. Mary asked why Wyatt could be in this prison. Wyatt said that Mary didn't need to think about him, and immediately asked Mary to leave.
I'm done. Come get me.
He also told Mary to no longer visit him in prison. Behind that, it can be seen that Warden was contacting his business partner. He was told that this man had an online streaming site that Warden had worked with to broadcast his illegal matches in prison all along. Warden earns a lot of money from the results of the match. Warden told him that he recently got a new fighter who was a former Special Forces officer, Wyatt. Hearing this, the curious partner immediately asked Warden to immediately compete with Wyatt tonight. Long story short, Wyatt was forcibly taken away by civilian officers and then put into the battle arena. When he was in the arena, suddenly Wyatt was immediately attacked by an inmate who at the moment was his opponent. In the middle of the fight, Warden's business partner was very satisfied when he saw Wyatt's toughness until in the end, Wyatt managed to make his opponent die. After winning the fight, Wyatt was visited again by Warden. Warden said that from that moment Wyatt will be one of his favorite fighters. But Wyatt said that he would no longer fight if someone had to die. Warden explained that the prison was his home and no one should refuse Warden's wishes. The next day, Wyatt wrote down the information he had known on a piece of paper. Soon the old man was in charge of delivering new books from the library outside the prison for the inmates to read. Here Wyatt slipped the paper into an old book and will be taken by the grandfather to the library again outside the prison. Arriving at the library, Steve's men were seen immediately carrying a book containing information paper from Wyatt. Quickly the paper reached Steve's hands, who were at the moment in the FBI office. The scene moved to Wyatt, who was currently talking to Orly and Tommy. Seeing the bruise on Wyatt's face, Orly directly understood that Wyatt was a fighter at the moment. When they were about to eat lunch, there came one of the burly prisoners who was so fierce and black. Wyatt asked Orly who this was. Orly said his name was Milton. But everyone called him the President. That's because Milton is one of the prison fighters who was so brutal and had never been defeated. Milton was also highly respected by prisoners, and none of the prisoners wanted to mess with him. Not long after that, Ari, the geeky man, even nudged Milton's food, making Milton immediately angry. Wyatt, who saw the incident, immediately asked Milton to release Ari, because he believed that it was an accident. But here Milton was even angry with Wyatt, because this was the first time there was a prisoner who dared to rule Milton. There was tension, and luckily Tommy immediately apologized to Milton. He said that Wyatt was just a new person who didn't know anything. Later that night, when Wyatt was in the cell, he was suddenly visited by the warden again, and forcibly taken to face Warden. Here, Warden asked Wyatt to fight again tonight, but Wyatt refused because he thought the fight was very inhuman. Hearing this, Warden immediately asked the deputy warden to show a photo of Mary and Wyatt's child. The deputy said that he would kill Mary and his son if Wyatt did not obey Warden's orders, until finally Wyatt was forced to obey Warden's orders to fight. This time, Wyatt's opponent was an inmate from Asia who is said to be very tough. Then the fight begins. But in the end, Wyatt was able to kill his opponent. When Wyatt was about to be taken back to his cell, Warden said that Wyatt must obey all his orders. If he did not want, Wyatt's family would be harmed. Hearing this, he immediately became angry because his family had nothing to do with all this. The scene moved to Mary, who was at the moment contacting Steve. Mary asked Steve why Wyatt was suddenly put in jail. Mary also felt strange because when she visited Wyatt, Wyatt even kicked Mary out. Steve only explained that Mary didn't need to worry, because soon Steve will help free Wyatt. On the other hand, you can see Wyatt, who was currently exercising with all the inmates. Along with that, Ari suddenly lied down because someone had stabbed him in the back. It turns out that the one who has injured Ari is Milton, who still didn't accept because his food was dropped by Ari the previous day. Seeing this, he could no longer hold his emotions and then challenged Milton to fight to the death in the fighting arena. At night, Wyatt was visited by a female warden. It turns out that this female warden was sent by Warden to seduce Wyatt. This was done as a reward from Warden, because Wyatt had fought very well, and it made Warden get a big income. However, being loyal to his wife, Wyatt flatly rejected the female warden's seduction. The next day, Wyatt wrote back the information he had got. Then, as usual, Wyatt slipped his information paper into a book and gave it to the old man to take to the library. Next to Wyatt's cell, Tommy was peering through his cell and saw clearly what Wyatt was doing. In the evening, 2 guards returned to the cell of the inmates. But this time Orly turned out to be the one who had to run the fight. Orly was taken into the arena by the 2 wardens. When he got there, Orly immediately warmed up before he fought. Before long, Milton arrived, and Orly immediately was not confident after knowing that his opponent at the moment was Milton. But inevitably Orly must still face him, and the fight began.
Oh, Riley. I thought you had... Come on, Riley.
Milton then beat Orly severely, until in the end Orly died in the fight. In the morning, Wyatt and all the inmates returned to their usual activities. Here Wyatt tried to find Orly, because he did not see Orly. Then there was one of the inmates who told him that Orly had been killed by Milton during the fight last night. Hearing this, he could only be quiet after knowing that his best friend was dead. Then Wyatt was taken by 2 of the wardens into his cell. Arriving in front of the cell, it turned out that there was already Warden waiting. Warden, who had already carried Wyatt's information paper in his library books, asked who Wyatt worked for. But because Wyatt didn't want to reveal it, he was finally taken to an isolation room for interrogation. After that, Warden's men also did not hesitate to kill the old man who had been delivering the book. Back in Wyatt, at the moment he was being tortured by the warden and the deputy. Here Wyatt asked how Warden came to find the book. Suddenly Tommy arrived, who immediately said that he was the one who had told Warden. It turns out that Tommy chose to betray Wyatt by reporting all of it to Warden. Tommy hoped that by reporting this, the warden would release himself from this prison. But unfortunately, Tommy's expectations were not to his liking, because at that time Warden immediately killed Tommy. On the other hand, at the moment Steve was worried because he couldn't contact Wyatt anymore. Then Steve went to Mary's house to tell her what Wyatt was really doing. Steve immediately explained to Mary that Wyatt was not in prison for committing a crime, but he was carrying out a special mission from the FBI. Wyatt did all this for the sake of Mary and her son, because he didn't want to continue to be unemployed and a burden on the family. Here Steve planned to take Mary and her son away, because he was afraid that the Wyatt's family would become Warden's target. But just as Mary was about to prepare luggage, suddenly the civilian deputy and other Warden men came and shot Steve. Then they immediately forcibly took Mary and her son to prison. When they left, it turned out that Steve was still alive because he was wearing a bulletproof vest. Steve immediately contacted headquarters to mobilize all FBI troops to arrest Warden and all the corrupt guards that same night. Moving on to Wyatt's wife and son, who were currently being taken to prison to appear before Warden. Here, Warden planned to take Wyatt's family as a prisoner so that Wyatt would tell him who sent him. But before that, Warden asked Mary and her son to watch Wyatt's match against Milton, which was about to begin. Soon Wyatt entered the arena. Here Wyatt was so shocked after seeing his family who were in Warden's hands at the moment, it made Wyatt somehow must win this fight for them. In the middle of the fight, Wyatt and Milton looked equally tough. Then the Warden put a PS4 stick to be used as a weapon in the fight.
Doesn't get any better than this.
Wyatt, who was indeed a former trained Special Forces, of course he was able to beat Milton to make him die. However, he did not want to kill Milton because he did not want his child and wife to witness Wyatt killing people. Seeing that, Warden finally entered the arena and immediately beat Wyatt. Warden insisted that in every fight someone must die, and if Wyatt didn't want to kill Milton, Warden would kill Wyatt in front of his own family. Behind that, outside the prison it turns out that Steve and all the FBI have surrounded the place. Some of the FBI broke inside and knocked out all the guards there. Back to Wyatt, who will be killed by Warden at the moment. But simultaneously Steve immediately shot the deputy warden, which made him bounce into the arena. Seeing this, Wyatt immediately took advantage of Warden's negligence by directly beating Warden. Wyatt said that he worked for federal agents. Then Warden was eventually arrested by Steve and all his men. Sometime later, it was seen that at the moment Wyatt had been appointed as a member of the FBI and received a huge bonus for successfully carrying out the mission. Currently Wyatt was no longer unemployed, and that certainly made Mary and his son proud. On the other hand, Warden was a prisoner at the moment and will soon be sentenced to death in the near future. Meanwhile, all staff and wardens of the prison have been replaced by honest and elected people. Then the movie is over.
If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy to hit the like button, and if you disliked it, hit the dislike button twice, just to be sure. You should watch the whole movie. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe for more video like this.